So another sort of ratio question they can ask you is something that looks like this. We've got a recipe that needs 50 grams of flour and 80 grams of sugar. Now, obviously a real recipe, you wouldn't just have flour and sugar, but I'm just trying to make a simple example here. So this recipe for a flour and sugar mix needs a ratio of 2 to 3. Now, if it says that in a question, flour and sugar, the words come in that order. So in the ratio, they're in that order as well, flour and sugar. Can we make 150 grams of whatever it is we're making? Would be the first sort of question they can ask us. And that's a nicer version of the question. A slightly nastier version of the question is, what's the most that we can make? Now, the way to think about it, actually, there aren't any new mathematical techniques here. It's our boxes again. Now, if you've not watched the other videos on this, then you might not be familiar with these boxes. Feel free to go back and have a look. Flour and sugar in the ratio 2 to 3. Okay, so I'm going to draw out the ratio using boxes. Now, the mistake that people make is try and think of these numbers as a ratio, 50 grams of flour to 80 grams of sugar, which is a sort of natural thing to do because we've got those two amounts and we know it's a ratio question, but actually that's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to keep the ratio here, flour and sugar in the ratio 2 to 3, and we're going to say, well, if we can make 150 grams, then that 150 grams is made up out of flour and sugar. It's made up out of these 5 boxes. So in other words, 150 grams split between 5 boxes, that would mean 30 grams in each box, 30 grams per share. So I'd need 60 grams of flour and 90 grams of sugar. Have I got enough? No, I've not quite got enough of either the flour or the sugar, okay? Now, some questions will be like that, there's not enough of flour and sugar. Some questions will be there's enough flour and there's enough sugar, and other questions will be, well, there's enough sugar but not enough flour. So if you got enough sugar but not enough flour, you're still going to have to say, no, we haven't got enough to make our 150 grams. Okay, so that's the first version of it. Now, the second version will be like this. What's the most that we can make? So in this case, again, we're using the same technique which you just use the boxes. Now, if you really hate the boxes, picturing them is still going to help you, picturing the shares. So, what's the most that we can make? Well, the most that I can make is either going to use up the flour or it's going to use up the sugar, isn't it? One of them is going to run out before the other. And if we're lucky, they'll both run out at the same time and making exactly 150 grams. Well, sorry, we're not got 150 grams anymore, have we? If we're lucky, they'll both run out at the same time, and they'll be in this ratio exactly. But unless that happens, we're going to run out of one before the other. So let's start by saying, well, do we run out of flour first? Well, if we run out of flour first, then we've used up all the flour. So that 50 grams of flour fills in these 2 boxes. That would be 25 grams in each box. So if that's correct, 25, 25, 25, that means I've used up all 50 grams of flour and I've used up 75 grams of the sugar. So that works, doesn't it? If there's 25 in each box, I can use up 50 grams of flour to 75 grams of sugar. So the total that I can make is 125 grams, because that's made up of flour and sugar. The total weight is 125 grams. That's the most I can make. So there we were lucky that the first one that we looked at worked. Let's just show that it's not the other way around. Flour and sugar. Now, if we use up all the sugar first, then that 80 grams gets split between these 3 boxes. So we've got 80 divided by 3, which gives us 26.6 recurring. So 26.6 recurring in each box, 26.6 recurring, 26.6 recurring, 26.6 recurring, 26.6 recurring. So that would mean, how much flour do we need? Well, I need 2 lots of 26.6 recurring. Well, that is more than 50 grams of flour, isn't it? So if I use up all the sugar, I don't have enough flour. If I use up all the flour, I've got enough sugar and I've got a little bit of sugar left over. Okay? So what's the most we can make? Well, the most we can make would use up all the flour, not all the sugar, so 125 grams. So if they ask you what's the most you can make, you've got to do a bit of fiddling around and experimenting, but it's still, splitting the ratio up with the boxes will solve the problem for you. If they ask you, can we make 150 grams? Then the key is 150 grams split in this ratio, how much flour and sugar do you need? And then compare it to the numbers they give you. It feels like they're being nicer by giving you numbers, giving you amounts that we've got, but actually it's a slightly harder question than if they just said how much flour and sugar needed to make 150 grams.